So Joshua said, can you do a video on how a beginner can practice ghost notes to get better at them? Your videos are great. Thanks so much, Joshua. Really appreciate that. And absolutely, today we will do that video. So I want to just go ahead and dive right in and tell you about the 16th note grid. And we're going to just go through this grid, and then I'll do a little bit more explaining to sort of set the stage. When you count 16th notes, you count 1 E and Okay, so if you imagine 4 circles, 1 E and there are 16 possibilities inside of that. All right, you can play on 1, you can play on E, you can play on and, you can play on Those are 4 possibilities. Okay, you can play on 1 E, you can play on E and, so on and so forth. All right, I'll put it up on the screen, the 16th note grid, and you'll see there are all the possibilities. So I'm going to put my metronome on at 80 BPM, and we are going to go ahead and play through this 16th note grid, and then we'll talk a little more about this. All right, so here we go. I almost forgot. I'm going to play quarter notes on my hi-hat to just keep time. 1, 2, 3, 4. And on my left hand, I'm going to be playing ghost notes on the snare following the 16th note grid. Okay, got a little ahead of myself, but that's what we're going to do. Then we'll talk more about it. Okay, so that is a grid that you can use to put on a metronome and practice playing your ghost notes on that grid. And those are really all of the possibilities within a 16th note time frame. Okay, if you go into 32nd notes, there's more possibilities, but within a 16th note time frame or subdivision, those are the possibilities. And so what you want to do is start really slow and just practice this and make sure that you're keeping your stick bead really low to the head. Okay, when you start off, play in the center of the head. As you get better and better and you get more control, you can move it around and kind of hear how things are sounding on different parts of the drum head. But for this practice, just keep your stick bead really low and play these really light. These ghost notes need to be super light. If you're having trouble with this, I was for a long time, there's a good chance you just need to rebuild your hands, your hand technique from the ground up. And that's what I do over at tempoleague.com with my Better Hands course. So I'm not going to dive into too much right now. There's just a lot of different hand techniques, motions that you need to get built into your hands. And when you do that, ghost notes will come a lot more naturally. They'll sound better. They'll sound more musical. So I encourage you to go do that. But assuming you have the hand technique and you're just trying to focus in on ghost notes, it's, again, a very light touch on the snare. You're not gripping the stick really tight and actually hitting it against the head. You're staying really loose and almost like dropping the stick into the head. Again, that's a hand technique thing. Go get your hand technique worked out if you need to. But that's how you play them is just very low and light. And you got to have a lot of control. Do not go faster than you're able to play it perfectly and to play it really clean, polished, so you're not messing up and that you're able to stay with the metronome. But this grid is a great thing to do that too. Now, for the first time I did the grid, we played quarter notes, right? And we went through the grid at 80. I'm going to go ahead and do eighth notes and do the grid one more time, still at 80 BPM. But eighth notes on the hi-hat's going to be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then we'll add the grid in. Here we go. Okay, so don't feel like you have to play the right hand on the hi-hat. You could play it on the ride. You could do whatever you want, but the biggest focus here is playing the ghost notes, low, light, on the head, and building this structure, this grid, this form. You'll hear it called different things. But putting it into this context really helps when it's time to practice, because you sit down and instead of just going, I'm going to noodle around on the kit and hope I get better. No, you put on that metronome and you work through the grid. You stay disciplined and you work through the grid. And then you can noodle around a little bit, right? Just mess around, but make sure you put the metronome on as part of your practice. Maybe after you do the grid for 10 minutes, maybe you throw the metronome on and say, all right, for 5-10 minutes now, I'm just going to kind of mess around and see what I can come up with. Because that's the whole point of the grid, is you then train your muscles, you train your hands to play those ghost notes in different places. And then when you're grooving, you can just add them in. Now, I'm going to do some examples at 80 and then move up the tempo ladder. And I might throw in some buzzes, some grace notes, right? But at the end of the day, it's all coming back to this grid. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's try it at 80. I might jump up to like 160. So we're playing a lot quicker. But anyway, there's still 16th notes at 160. They're not 32nd notes. So here we go. Okay, so one thing is when you're playing those ghost notes, you notice I'll play a backbeat on that snare, and right after I play a ghost note. You've probably heard this if you've studied the Rosanna Shuffle at all from Toto, Jeff Porcaro on drums. He plays that backbeat, and then right after a ghost note follows. So that's something to practice too, is playing that backbeat, and then you stop the stick low to the head and let that ghost note follow. Again, something we talk about over at tempoleague.com. But I'll just do a little bit more demonstration of how you can combine these things together to add ghost notes in. Okay, so the other grid you can think about is a triplet-based grid. So 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet. And again, the snare can be on 1, it can be on trip, it can be on let, it can be on 1 trip, it can be on triplet, right? So let's play through that a little bit. Okay, so those are some ideas for how to take a structure, put ghost notes into that structure, practice them, stay disciplined, and then listen to different songs, hear different grooves, and think about, okay, well, where are those ghost notes fitting in based on what I know about the grid, right? The 16th note grid. And after a while, it'll just start becoming second nature. It'll feel right to put ghost notes in certain places, and just stick with it, and you'll be just fine. So thank you for checking this out. Thank you, Joshua, if that's how you say your username, I think it is, for the comment, for the request. And I sure hope you all have a great week. Thanks for checking out Temple League. See you next time.